Welcome back. I'm here with Adam Prosser, MD of Active Internet Marketing. Welcome back, Adam. We're just going to talk a little bit more broadly now about your business journey. Tell us how you started out in business.
Absolutely. So originally, I was very involved in sales. That was where my main sort of skill lied. I used to work for a print based advertising medium, so Yellow Pages. Right. That was at the time essentially, I would say, the Google of its day. Yeah. So people didn't rely on their phones. They didn't use the internet as much, and if they had an immediate need for a product or service, they would pick up the Yellow Pages and find someone local and get in touch with them. But as time moved on, found that was quite quickly changing. The world was changing, and people were looking towards the search engines and predominantly Google again to help them in that way. So a few people that I knew had started a business that was around search engine optimization. I got in at a very early sort of stage. I headed the sales for that, and we focused on the small independently run business, so we could get decisions, have a real impact, deal with the owner, and we very quickly built up a big cross section of customers within one area, and then we would move to the neighbouring town and try and get a lot of customers there, and so on, and try and build up really. And before we knew it, we had a whole team of salespeople out there, and if we could get in front of people, then we could demonstrate the benefits. So the hardest part was getting in front of people. But once we'd done that, we had an excellent product. And we built up, and we actually became the largest SEO company outside of London. We had over 200 employees. And it was fairly unique, I would say, at that time. And through research and development, we were able to lead the way. Definitely, we were far ahead of any competitors that come near to us.
Was that an entrepreneurial spark that ignited them? And did you own part of that business?
I didn't actually own it. I was involved from an early stage of it, but I was definitely influential in looking at how it was grown and looking at how we take the products to market. Because sales was largely my responsibility, we would look at how we convey what we could offer, what messages we would take to the market. I was involved with a field sales team. We had a telesales team. I was involved with that as well. So a lot of it around that time was educating people. It was often something people weren't familiar with, hadn't heard of it. I think, again, giving them a very logical argument of why they should be doing that as opposed to something else, and communicating it in an accurate and clear way, managing their expectations, was all part of delivering that. So that business was involved in a private equity sale. I stayed with it for a while. There was a very different environment once that happened, I would say. Things changed quite a lot, some for the better, but certainly not all of them. And then I decided to basically set up my own version of that. I always the market had changed quite a bit in that where we used to do an approach that could be done on that sort of scale, because the algorithm had become more complex and more complicated. Each client had to be dealt with in more of a bespoke way, and you couldn't have a one-size-fits-all approach. So you had to be a lot more unique in how we'd approach it. So I wanted to have a smaller business, but offering essentially a similar product, but with a more service-orientated approach, more personal approach. I had a lot of experience, so hence that was when I formed Active Internet Marketing.
So if we go back to that first company, thinking about the leadership of that company? I mean, growing, expanding in a brand new market, new technology and stuff like that. What kind of leadership approach were they taking?
Um, I think there was a real mix of personalities in there, really,
Yeah,
and
always.
that was a strength. I think definitely it was a very sales-driven business. One of the founders was, I guess, like myself, in that his primary focus was sales, and that was where his skill lies. The other was a very studious person, very much focused on technology and focused on delivery. He's very detail orientated and able to make sure that things were executed in a consistent fashion. We then had some quite creative people, who was another sort of personality type within there. So generally, on a majority of the time, we all got on well, which was good helps, considering there were so many different people. But leadership-wise, there's some very different personalities, and I think what was achieved there is something that doesn't happen very often. I think there was an opportunity, a new market, a collective of like-minded, quite young at the time, dynamic people, and I think there was a lot of things that fitted right at that time, and the personality, from leadership, going back to the question, the personalities worked, and the skills were. A lot of the time we were doing things we hadn't done before, so it was new. But I guess the basic knowledge and the attitude was there.
What about the culture then? Because culture in those kind of businesses is always very important, and I find you can either just let the culture occur by accident based on the people that you've got in the business and what they're like, or you can design a culture by saying, this is how I want this business to be seen, how I want it to behave, what it stands for, who we are, what we believe. What was it like in those early days of that sort of cutting edge technology?
So yeah, it's interesting actually, because like I said, I was involved in the sales side, and we had a very strong culture of needing to deliver that was reinforced through all the people I interacted with and led. Delivery was key, results were key. We had to sell things with expectations that were accurate. We had to educate clients in an accurate way, but there was quite stretching targets, and the quality of sale was key. So if people were not delivering on their results was one thing, but the product had to be sold in a good quality way where it would stand up and last. So that was key, and there was a culture around sales there. When it then came to delivery, there was a lot of young people. It needed to be a fun environment, a very modern environment. There was lots of team activities. So there was a lot more, some more light-hearted stuff, but also an underpinning of a lot of monitoring, a lot of traceability, and delivery needed to happen as well. Then we had accounts department that was a lot more serious, and they kind of, well, I guess they were a lot older in age actually than the majority there, a lot more experienced, but they kind of had their own culture. So the difficulty then actually became tying all of those up and having a unified culture across all of it, and that was something that you could see that was a difficulty or a challenge, but one that had to be overcome. So yeah, it was, in a growing business, I think it's with the rate that we were growing, it's always quite hard to have a strong message as things change so quickly, and you might have 8 new starters on a Monday morning and 6 the next Monday. So trying to get those people trained up but into a culture as well, it's not always easy.
Interesting. And what's the best way in your experience, both then and now, to motivate a sales team?
Our team was highly motivated in financial terms. But we had to, the difficulty we had actually was we had to make the commission scheme motivational. It was extremely rewarding. There were some very high paid individuals, but we had to make sure it wasn't open to abuse. Again, like I said, we were selling a product that people wouldn't necessarily see the benefits of until 6 months had passed. And we had to make sure that they had the right expectations.
And did you use any kind of models or any sort of sales principles? You know, there's thousands, millions of books being written on sales and millions of sales gurus. Was there a particular approach that you found was effective?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was translated directly from a particular individual or sales trainer, but we would have sales training every single weekly meeting. We would have a lot of individual sales training. I would constantly be out with salespeople, advising them, monitoring their calls, physical calls as well as telephone calls, giving them advice. So there's a huge amount of training. I think what we did was we took a lot of stuff that's quite recognised, decided this modified collective of information was now our sales process, and we applied it to our sale, and that allowed us to very quickly decipher where somebody was falling down at what stage of the process if they weren't getting the results that were needed. So then we could help that individual in a very clear way. Also, everybody was familiar with the process. They were familiar with how the product overlaid on top of that process, and we were all talking the same language, using the same terminology, and it was easy to support, I guess, within that, or identify where people were failing, but have a unified approach.
And would there be, one particular area, one particular golden nugget? We had Simon White was on this episode a couple of days ago, and he was talking about using the word "let's" as an interesting way of introducing the sales process, or let's have a meeting, let's take the next step. Does it make sense if we take the next step? From your perspective, are there any little golden nuggets there?
We had a 2-call sales process. Right. So we would do some keyword research, I mentioned in the earlier part, go and visit somebody, talk to them about strategy, find out what they were looking to do with their business, and then revisit them for a second time with a solution and close them. So it was slightly drawn out. If there was one key to what we had to do, it was to close and confirm at every stage of the sales process. So the analogy I would use is a corridor, and you could take the client from one end of the corridor right to the other end. Yeah. But if you haven't closed the doors and confirmed at every stage as you've gone down the corridor, there's an opportunity for them to run all the way back, and you're right back at the beginning.
Love it. Yeah, so get them excited about the next stage and keep them
and keep confirming that you've understood the information accurately. What they're telling you is this, so you're telling me you want to achieve that. Mm-hmm. How committed to that are you? And commit them and confirm at every stage.
Yeah. So the private equity thing happened, and you ended up that, I guess, was when that entrepreneurial spark ignited, and you thought, right, I can do this myself. I can found my own company.
Absolutely.
And what were the challenges at the start of that?
Well, no money was a big challenge. I had I feel an experience, and I feel I had some ability in sales. I had very limited working capital, and I needed a delivery function that was immediate as soon as I'd sold something. So it was fairly high barrier to entry, I would say, in that sort of sense that some businesses need huge amounts of equipment. We weren't in that sense, but we needed people that could deliver what I said I could deliver. So I needed to have an office day one. I needed all of the equipment in it day one. I needed several staff within it day one. So I had quite a lot of costs before it even began. So the challenge was to go and sell something, then not sell anything, stay in the office, make sure we delivered it, then go and sell something else.
Oh, right. So sort of roller coaster of market.
Absolutely,
do the work,
yeah. And it was a challenge. And I think, before we could cover our costs, It was a very, very challenging time. But I think you needed, I personally needed a lot of determination, and a sense that, failure was not an option.
Yeah. And did you develop your own leadership style at that point, or did you carry on using the styles that you'd been used to and been?
Yeah, I would say my leadership style's definitely changed a lot over time. I think some people tell me I got soft in my old age, but I think at the first point, I probably was quite hard with people, and I'm not saying I would recommend that, but like I said, failure was not an option. Certain things had to happen, otherwise we were not going to satisfy what our clients needed, and we weren't going to make enough money to pay the bills at the end of the month. So it was not a joke, and it was not. I guess it was a very
Quite a tough crack the whip.
Yeah,
reach the target.
Absolutely, it was critical. I think over time now we've developed processes and tracking. So if I want to know if somebody's doing their job or not, I can look at some reports and very quickly decipher what they're doing every minute and every hour. Everything is tracked. Also, there's not such a hand-to-mouth sort of environment. So I think been able to, perhaps I've become a little bit more relaxed as a person over time. But we're certainly not relaxed with our client work, but I think it's probably a slightly nicer environment than what it was.
And people, I mean, you mentioned the sales team in the first business being, highly motivated by the incentives, the financial incentives in particular. But now that you're in charge of the whole business and you're dealing with the sales and the delivery and the accounts and everything like that, they're all motivated by slightly different things, and people today are more are motivated differently from how they would have been 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What's this kind of motivational style now?
I think because we're a much smaller business, people are much more motivated on a very individual level. So I personally try to understand people's lives, what's going on in their lives, what they might be having key moments in their life, buying their first house, or starting a family or something like that. So we've got various employees at various life stages, and I always try and understand that and make sure that the way they're rewarded will appeal to what's going on with them. I would say that we try and keep people by rewarding them well. So that is definitely a factor. Some of people that I employ I've worked with for over 20 years now in various companies and businesses, friends as well. So the way that they're rewarded is really important, but we're trying to understand really what motivates them. It's not just financial motivation that's making a difference to people.
And one of the key things, I mean, I've coached a few people this year who are ending up selling and exiting their businesses, and one of the things is trying to make the business less dependent on the owner. What's your approach to that?
Yeah, it's something I definitely have very proactively tried to do. I think I've had this business for quite a long period now, over sort of 12, 13 years. I think through that time I've gone through varying stages of how much I want to be involved in it. I've definitely very conscious of trying to leave something behind, a legacy, and also planning my life as a get older, that I want to do less and less, but I still want to get the benefits of the income from it. So I'm very conscious in decisions I make around that. And I think the biggest transition in terms of where I am now to when I was involved in the business every single day of the week was that I would just become a lot more careful with my time. And I feel as a business owner, you can want to be involved in everything, and you can feel that you should rush here and rush there and go and see this person and do that. I won't go and do anything at all unless I feel there's a value in doing it. I think sometimes you could be rushing around and the value could be questionable.
Busyness is a bit of a disease, I think. People think that a full and active schedule packed with meetings and things like that is a sign of productivity, but it actually can't be. And that, I mean, it kind of brings me on to this because, Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks here about the difference between urgent and important and setting time aside for the activities that are not urgent, but still very important. How would you categorize those?
Yeah, definitely. As you know, I'm very familiar with that book.
Yes,
we've discussed it several times, and it's been a great help to me over the years. I think, sort of not urgent but important is one that is probably the first one missed. Yes. Whereas I do actually spend quite a lot of time looking at the business, not just working in it, but also thinking of the future. We're in a very fast-moving market, quite an early emerging market still, and a question I often raise to myself is, what's this going to look like in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? What steps do I need to take? What do we need to be looking at? What other products do we need to develop? Who is going to be the right people to take those forward? So that time of reflecting and planning, there's no urgency. But it is very, very important, and I do make time to do that, definitely.
And what about goals? I mean, I speak to a lot of business owners about goals, and I get different responses. Some people think that they're very important. Some people are quite dismissive of them. Setting those targets for the future. Do you believe that's an important part of business?
Absolutely. I think when I began the business, I set some quite considerably large goals, I would say, for myself with a 3-year plan. Financially, I break them down by week and by month. Again, like we said, I was probably a bit harsher with some people, holding them to that. And I got to that point where I wanted to be a month earlier than what I'd set out. So, which I was pleased about. If I hadn't have done that, we might not even still be here now. So, I've just started working on a new area with some newer products to complement what we're doing, and within that I have a completely separate business plan. I have financial targets, have a model I'm working towards, again broken down by month. I will continuously monitor that, so I don't think you will ever achieve what you can, your full potential, if you don't have clear goals.
Yeah, it's easy to drift a little bit.
I
want to come back to this book because I know that you've said to me before that you've used this in your business. You've actually sat down and given copies of this book to your team, and tell us a bit about that and what kind of impact it had on them.
So I've given it to various people, but I've also with certain people actually I suppose made them to a degree until after a while they see the benefit and they get more into it. We actually would sit down once a week with the audio book playing. We would have the physical copy in our individual hands, and we went through the book from start to finish. We would constantly stop it, review it, discuss it. And it played dividends, definitely. Those people largely are still with me. They understand the book, the terminology. We sort of talk in the same way about it. We've got a knowledge of it. And often now they come to me and say, I've done this, and this, and for this reason. And the reason I did it is because of this, and it might be some principle that was through there. So, and I think it's to a certain degree given people a confidence that it's almost like a Bible, but if they've made a decision that perhaps they feel they potentially should have checked with me, but they were able to justify it based on something within that book. They've then been confident enough to do it without me.
I was starting with the end in mind, or whatever.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you'd pick out? I mean, I've read this many times. We're doing it with the book club and things like that. Is there any particular part of it that you would pick out just to finish off, where you think, that is a principle, or that part of that principle is the one that keeps cropping up as very useful?
I think all of the book actually, like, to not answer your question directly, but all of the book I think is really beneficial. I think people can take elements from it and benefit from them in their own right. But I think if you took a couple of elements out of it, you'd get some benefit. Yeah. If you put all of the book together, I think you'd actually get 100 times more benefit. Yeah. I do think it's something that, although laborious at times, people should actually invest in themselves and cover the whole thing. And then each principle is 10 times as more powerful when used together. So I kind of like them all, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'll answer my own question then. The final habit, the sharpen the saw, is the one where I find the business owners who do that and commit to that, they recognise the limitations of their own knowledge. And by constantly educating themselves, whether that's watching videos or reading books or going to seminars or things like that, that's the one where they develop that habit of learning. Yeah, and that's a really powerful thing for business owners. Brilliant. Adam, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for doing the personal part of it as well.
Thanks for inviting me.
And thanks everybody for watching.